Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca.
This is Dmitry Samarov from Chicago, Illinois, and I love listening to Vish Khanna's Creative Control because whether he's talking to a favorite musician or actor of mine or someone I've never heard of, it's as if he's introducing me to a new friend. And the way things are going, couldn't you use a new friend? Listen now.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/creativecontrol today.
Alec Mackay is an influential and acclaimed lyricist, performer, singer, musician, and poet based in his hometown of Washington, D.C. A key and active member of the early Dischord Records community, Mackay is renowned for his role in pioneering punk and hardcore bands like Untouchables, The Faith, and Ignition, who were active in the 1970s and 1980s, and in the 1990s, he sang and played guitar in the post-punk band The Warmers. After a lengthy hiatus from music making, Mackay is writing and singing in an excellent new band called Hammered Hulls, which also features guitarist Mark Cisneros, bassist Mary Timoney, and drummer Chris Wilson. On October 28, 2022, Dischord Records released the fantastic debut LP by Hammered Hulls. It's called Careening, and it prompted Alec and I to connect for a great conversation about his life in Washington, D.C., and the Mackay family's connection to Nova Scotia, how Hammered Hulls came to be and their remarkable sound, what the early days of Dischord Records were like for Mackay and his friends and bandmates, making one of the last albums ever recorded at Inner Ear Studios with engineer Don Zientara, what his brother Ian Mackay brought to the proceedings in his role as producer, his writing style and the lyrical imagery on Careening, tour dates, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creative control, which is the primary source of revenue for all of this work that I do, and also a place where you can get perks like episodes early, extra content, things like that. Thanks for your support at patreon.com/creative control, if I might say. Plus, in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 729 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Alec Mackay of Hammered Hulls, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Alec. How you doing?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thank you. Thanks for asking. Nice to see you and encounter you. I don't believe we've ever spoken before in our lives. That's probably fair?
I think that's correct.
It's nice to chat with you. Where in the world are you today?
I am in DuPont Circle. Well, more specifically, I'm in the basement of an art museum where I work in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., in the United States on the continent of North America.
Very specific information. Thank you very much. I associate you with Washington, D.C. Have you ever lived anywhere else?
No, I never have. Well, I guess when I was in fourth grade, age 9, my family lived in Palo Alto, California for 1 year, one school year basically, and that was very different. But other than that, I've always lived in D.C., and I know I've traveled widely, but I always come back here.
Nice. How are things going in DC for you today? Generally, what's the vibe in the city, if you will?
The vibe in the city is it's the last days of summer sort of weather. It's warm and the sun is shining and the leaves are changing a bit, but people are really there's a lot of people out on the street and doing things, and it's kind of nice. But it is there's a ton of, I guess they're improvements, but really there's just a ton of roadworks and construction and things to keep people working. And it creates a funny kind of a tension because people can't navigate either by foot or by vehicle or any other way. So there's just a lot of chaos. I think that adds to the general vibe of the city at the moment. But otherwise, and beyond that, I don't know. That's all I can detect.
I've been hearing this a lot and experiencing this a lot, even in my own city of Edmonton. A lot of construction. A lot of the big cities seem to be constantly under construction, gentrification.
What do you think that's about? I think it's in our case. I believe that it has to do with some kind of economic crisis, and I think that they're keeping people, giving jobs that are going to take. I just know that they've been digging up Massachusetts Avenue for about 2 years, and they keep coming back and doing it again, and bringing in first the sidewalk guys and the curbstone guys, and then and not just guys, but they are doing these over and over. And I do feel like it's helping the economy in certain levels to replace another level of the economy that I think is they don't want to talk about. But that's just a theory. I've never heard anybody mention it.
Yeah, there's obviously economic displacement going on within what you're talking about, I believe. And I think also, I'm relatively familiar with how city budgets work, or whatever, municipal state budgets. They give you a fiscal, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we got to spend the fiscal. But to your point, they're creating,
particularly in Washington, because it was created as a federal enclave, and as it developed, they squeezed out industrial activity, like actual fabrication, manufacture, any of that kind of stuff that used to happen was moved out. And so generally it's anybody who is working here is working for the federal government on some level. And now that the many people in the government aren't coming back into the city because of the pandemic response, so now there's a lot less people just coming into work. They work from the suburbs, and huge amounts of the city you can't have your mom and pop diner anymore because there's not enough people to come in during the day. So it's just a lot of that kind of changes. I don't know about other cities. Other cities tend to have more. They've whatever you call that, spread their portfolio a little more.
Fair enough.
Differently.
Yeah, fair enough. I've been talking to lots of artistic folks, and myself included. I will add to this milieu because my family and I left Ontario because of the economic situation in that province. It's the most populous province in Canada, and the real estate market was prohibitive. We tried to move. We have a family. My wife and I have 2 kids. So we couldn't find we owned the bank mostly owned it, but we had a house with 2 bedrooms. We couldn't move. So my wife has family in Alberta. The real estate's much cheaper here. I'm hearing and seeing artists exit bigger cities for more affordable ones. You yourself, have you ever contemplated living anywhere besides where you live in DC for any reason?
It's funny you say. When I used to tour widely, I wanted to live almost every single place I ever went. I loved every town, every city I met. I would find wildly appealing and could picture myself there. It's different now that I also have kids, and also it's something about like a tipping point where now that I've become famous in my neighborhood anyway for being an OG neighborhood person. And I can brag about being a 6th-generation Washingtonian, and now I don't want to be the one that messes it up. But to answer your question, I think you want to know where I might go is what you're asking. I don't know. I always think if I do move, and we may have to be honest, I'm sort of in the same, what you just described.
Yeah.
I can't afford to live in the house we're in. My neighbors keep patting each other on the back saying how great it is our houses are worth so much, and it's only if you're selling them, right? But then when I try to complain about it, people don't feel so sympathetic because I actually own a house. So
right.
It's hard. But I think I would like to move to somewhere that I don't speak the language. I think I would, or at least just a different country, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder what you eyeball in Canada, Quebec, something like that.
I would love Canada. Yeah, I do. I would, yes, I would love to live in Canada. Maybe I should just go back to Nova Scotia to Grand River, where my great grandfather DJ lives with a bunch of fisher folk right there, where the Bredor Lake meets the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, nice.
It's very beautiful.
Oh, well, you'd be welcome with open arms, if I may say. So we'll keep tabs on you for that, maybe. Listen, I want to congratulate you on this beautiful and excellent new record, Careening by Hammered Hulls. Can we talk a little bit about where this band kind of came from, so to speak?
Sure. And actually, let me just back it up for a second. You heard me just say DJ McKay. I've been told that that's how he pronounced his last name. However, as you said, as we talked about earlier, I am Alec Mackay.
Yes, this has been a source of some debate among people who follow your brother Ian's work, and every once in a while, I still to this day get a little side eye when I say his name properly, Ian Mackay, because some people
look at
they like, I think you're saying that wrong. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not, but anyway,
yes, it's Mackay.
Yeah, but the old the original pronunciation you're saying was McKay. Perhaps.
In his case, I've been told by my father, who is my main connection to that side of the family, obviously.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, back to your question. How did Hammered Hulls? Mark Cisneros, I would say, is the driving force. He's the linchpin in all of it. And he and Mary Timoney, they've known each other and played together for years and years. They both teach music. And I think, they had a project where they were playing together early on, and then after that, Chris and Mark, Chris Wilson, who's in a ton of bands and has been in a number of bands, began talking about playing, and then they wanted to play with Mary. And lastly, I don't know exactly, I think it was Chris and Mark speaking to each other, and Chris and I had I loved his drumming in The Pharmacists. And so I would see him every time they would play in D.C. and other places, and we were just talking about music. This
is Ted Leo's band, just for people listening.
Yes, correct. Ted Leo and the Pharmacists.
Yeah.
And Ted used to live here in Washington, and I know him quite well, and we share a birthday, in fact, and coincidentally. And I just remember talking to Chris about music, and he asked specifically if I would. I think a lot of people think that since I didn't do it for a long time, that I'm somehow folded up the tent and closed the chapter or whatever it is that people do. And I never do that. All my doors are always open. So I said that if there was some way. So I think that Chris brought that back to Mark, and they discussed it, and then asked if I would. And honestly, I could not think of three more amazing people individually, and then to have them in a conglomeration, and then to have them, interested in playing music with me, that was fucking phenomenal. But then I got super imposter syndrome, where I just was like, I can't, and I didn't think I could bring enough to the table. But they're patient people, and we could make some, and writing songs just happened very quickly. I hadn't written lyrics or songs for years, but somehow I think that I was able to do it with them in a way that happened quickly. And so that's how the band came about, and then that's how the songs thusly came about.
When you talk about composing for yourself, I suppose, are you primarily talking about lyrics and singing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're bringing to the table?
Correct, yeah. And also performance. I mean, I can't read music. I'm not a quick study. I'm a grinded out person. That's the only way that at least in music, it's just practice, and then tour and just really make it. It's kind of like when you get skating and skateboarding, when you're trying to learn a trick, and you just keep hitting it, and you fail over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and then finally you get it right, and then you keep doing it so you can do it faster. And these are people who have been at it. They've been doing that for the past 25 years at least, and then I'm stepping in raw, and I just have to catch up. But I had to stop thinking that way. That's all. I just had to let go of that concern and just jump in and start where I am. And I think that was, for me anyway, the biggest obstacle was just thinking about it. I'd stop thinking about it.
A lot to get into here about the sound of this record and this band. I want to take a moment, though, to talk about this gap that you're alluding to, that people perceived as a gap, I should say. From what I can tell, you were in the Warmers as a contributor, as far as I know, that ended in the mid-'90s. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be like 96, something like that.
96.
97?
The record, the Warmers record that I could think of in my head right now, sorry, drawing upon my memories, around 96. Mm-hmm. Was that the last sort of activity from you in a musical sense?
Yes. I mean, aside from stepping, sometimes when Ted would come into town, he would ask if I want to sing a song with them. But aside from that, like one-offs, which was a handful, I don't really like doing that. I love playing with certain people, but I don't do that. Yeah. I'm not So to answer your question, that's it. That was all. That was it.
And so since around 96, you haven't really been an active person. And when Ted asked you to join them, what would you do? One of their songs, or would you do a Faith song? What would you do?
Oh, generally it would be, I call it covering a Faith song or a Ignition song sometimes, or whatever you want to do. We would do something that was from a previous band of mine. But so luckily I could remember the lyrics. I mean, I can remember those lyrics better than I can remember anything more contemporary. Things from when I was 15 I can do, but things from yesterday is a little harder.
Well, there's muscle. I find that about. I've talked about this on the show before. When I was a kid, and I liked a record, and I would drive around with the record as a child, or whatever, a teenager. I wasn't a child, and I would I know all the words to the first proper Wu-Tang Clan album. And these days, I have trouble remembering something now. I don't have the same relationship with music, because if I liked something, it would just be in my tape deck in the car that whole summer. And it just got, and I have a decent memory. I see it with my son now. They can remember lyrics. It's some sort of genetic thing.
Also first impressions, not just grinding it in. It's the actual first time you hear it, everything sticks. I mean, we can remember a lot of our, where I work in a museum that has a lot of impressionist paintings, and Claude Monet, that's what he said. He spent his entire, it was Bonnard saying that his entire objective was to get back to that first impression. What he was always he was striving for it. I have a little looser grip. I just like to allow it. But that does stay with you. And then the things that happen right now, they're so mixed in with all the, and also as we get older, we become more thoughtful about things. And so we are analyzing things as they're coming in. We're relating them to everything else we've ever known. Yeah. And it's a bigger pile, but anyway, but grinding it also helps it stay.
It does, absolutely. Repetition, yeah. So can we talk a little bit about that halting for you of musical activity, if you will? What do you reckon it was that caused you to stop when you did? And then within that, let's come full circle. You mentioned sort of the origin of this band and maybe what prompted you, but that's got to be a personal decision to stop and start the way you have. Can you talk about both things? Why stop and why are you back? Beyond being asked, why are you back?
The stopping was more when I got into music. I wasn't thinking I wanted to be a professional musician. What I was thinking, I was very focused on making something that I was 100% committed to. So I didn't want to do anything halfway. I didn't want to jam. I never jammed with people. And when people would say, well, I just do it for fun. And I'd say, well, I don't. I don't know what it is. I just do it for real. I don't mind having fun. I love having fun, but that's not my, a lot of people say, well, when it stops getting fun, I'm going to stop doing it. And it's like, okay. But then they keep on, maybe that's true. But a lot of people are really, they're willing to do sort of, and I say this, and it's a pathology, not a point of pride necessarily, is that I just had a pretty rigid thing about it. And if I couldn't be in a band and perform and do it the way that I thought was full commitment, then I wouldn't do it at all.
Right. Okay.
And so what that gets you is it's either all or nothing. Well, then you get nothing.
Yeah.
Because I was reaching an age where people were having to broaden and do things, and including myself, including starting a job that's full time and has not much time off, and just sort of realities. But I didn't mind it. I didn't mind saying no to it. It wasn't I didn't mourn it particularly. It was just a switch. And then I can do more now, so it's easier to allow it. But I also did let go of that rigor, or at least that much of a rigor. I still, I hope I'm making the right decision, but but I have to hold it a little more loosely, and it's working out pretty well.
That's something that I think comes with age too. You realize that you can actually go whole hog on more than one thing somehow. You can compartmentalize what you're whole hogging because like yourself, I have children, so I'm trying to maintain the things that fulfill me and I feel are contributing to my community, larger arts community. But I also have children to raise and family to raise and bills to pay. So you have to come to that. I feel like you and I are talking about the same thing. You come to this conclusion that you can actually multitask in a way that's fulfilling. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And also I just shifted what I'm applying myself to, like I didn't, like even the job that I do, I'm fully committed to it, even though it's not what a lot of people, they would go get a job in a record company or become an entertainment lawyer or do something that is tangentially connected to the thing but that to me is a little, at least for me, would be a little harder because it's too close, but not enough.
Yeah.
And I'd rather not, have to, because I know a lot of people who really, they want to work in a record label and then they find themselves consistently being shunted into versions of the thing that they don't,
that's
that
fair.
They have to do.
Yeah.
And now I work in a place that I'm committed to exactly what I do, but I don't have to know all their business and I don't take it personally with, all the things that this operation is. I just know that I need to get the paintings and the sculptures set up properly and safely and shipped around and do all the things, and I just leave it right there. But I focus with the same amount.
Yeah.
And then creatively, I tried to switch to writing. I mean, I didn't try to. I did. I applied myself to a different creative act that didn't involve collaboration with other people, that's the band part. I really do. When I'm playing music with a group, I want to be fully enmeshed, and I love that.
Yeah.
And I need it. And some people are able to skip from thing to thing, but I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
I need to be,
I appreciate that. Now, I'm external to the Washington, D.C. music community, obviously, but I would say I'm quite steeped in the lore and the stories about Dischord and DC. It's just something that's interested me since I was a teenager, and getting to see Fugazi for the first time when I was 17 and all those sorts of things. My sense of one of the things that has inspired myself and others like me who started labels or tried to galvanize their community was the Dischord model of we're reflecting our community and we're working together. And as I was listening to this record, the Hammered Hells record, I couldn't help but feel like I heard various eras of Dischord throughout this record, like throughout a song.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
You mean compositionally or lyrically or?
Yeah, compositionally for sure. Yeah. Like I don't. This wasn't where I was going with this line of thought right away, because what I really wanted to talk about was the fact that you stopped in the mid '90s, and you alluded to the fact that people were kind of coming of age and maybe getting jobs and doing all sorts of adult things. And I wondered if that's roughly, or like I was trying to think about the mid '90s and Dischord, because there was a point where it felt like that community push slowed down and there were fewer releases. And that's, I think, around the time where the community expanded too. It wasn't just going to be DC. There were the odd artists that the label would work with that weren't necessarily from the immediate community. So something was changing around that time. You changed around that time. You kind of stopped. So I wanted to allude to that first, because I wonder if you have a take on that. It seems to me that the community you're from, you guys worked together and fed off of each other in a way that I find interesting, where the musical styles of different bands would really be related to one another in lots of ways throughout different eras. Sorry, I'm babbling
Absolutely.
a little bit. Is that a fair assessment?
I follow you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a fair assessment. So around the mid-90s, when you stopped and felt like, I need to do something else, how would you characterize that era of DC and Dischord, if you can think on it? Because something made you feel like, I'm going to slow down a little.
Mm-hmm. Well, for one, I didn't it was not a conscious thought. It was not. I know you think it's a decision, but it wasn't. It was an adjustment, I would say maybe. I tend to not make those kinds of decisions. But to go back to your question, it's hard to really understand. I can only tell you the way it looked to me, but even then, I wasn't really absorbing what was happening to everyone. But I do think it's accurate that Dischord was growing up. Like these people in the bands were making music and changing and starting new bands and recreating and doing things. And you're right, we did come to a plateau around the same time. Age wise, and it does begin to splinter there, and people do pursue other creative things. And so I think that is probably exactly what happened with Dischord, except I could see how a label might then think, if it was a more business-minded label, it would say to itself, oh, well, I need somebody to buy this label. So I don't have to do this anymore, because now we're hitting some doldrums approaching. And if you were if you were an ambitious, if you were an ambitious business person who owned a label and ran a label, you might say, well, time to unload this.
Yeah.
But if you're a person who is not afraid of some slack time, and you know that you can still navigate this situation, then you just keep making the things you make, and you don't worry about where it's going to take you. And I think that's all it was a pause, and then people began to readdress. But it is different. Everything began to change. The way that music was consumed. The internet was, different deal. It's what's a label? What's a label if you don't have a vinyl record to stick it to? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Those kinds of things. And so those are a lot of things to go through. So it's, as a label, as what it produces, it's going to change. But there's a lot of X factors.
I think if a whole relatively similar generational group is doing something together, it's naturally going to ebb and flow the way people come of age, right? So it seems to me that you all, and we haven't gotten to this yet. I asked you about starting again with Hammered Hulls. I actually want to go all the way back to the beginning now that we've talked a little bit about this, because it seems to me that all of you were roughly around the same age and were somehow magically inspired together, like some collective joy and the recognition of the possibilities of what you could do. To me, it can be romanticized, but in my feelings and love of Dischord and my appreciation for it in terms of how it's shaped me in my own communities, in terms of like, let's just do things. Let's just work together and do things. Like, that's all there. But because of the way you all came of age, you needed, most people would say, oh, we need new blood. If we want to keep this enterprise going, we need to feed it. And I don't think that's how Dischord was operating. It is more of an organic thing. Like, you are now, the people in this band are not young people that are going to make the label a ton of money and be cool on TikTok, right? That's not the motivation.
Not that I'm aware of, but TikTok isn't they're not my boss yet, but I'm sure they will be soon. But,
anyway, sorry, again.
But yeah.
I just want to get to a couple of things here. One, I just wanted to convey that I think that the label and that community had a very admirable and natural trajectory, and it still does. And as the proponents of it in its early days get older, it is gratifying to hear you making music again, and that the label is not.
You think so.
Like the label, like as we're speaking, there's a Soulside record coming out as well in November.
Indeed,
and it's not nostalgia. It to me seems like, well, this is where is where we are now. The same people that were involved in building this thing.
I do not ache for what is past. That is nostalgia. Literally an ache.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
algia is an ache, and I don't ache for the past. I recognize the past, and it's with me now, and I'm still living it. It's a much more spherical version of time, I think.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Some people are different. But what is your question?
Fair question, Alec. Let's go back to the beginning. If we can think about what inspired you as a young person and your colleagues at the time, can you think back on it? What drew you to think, we can do this, I can do this, I'm Alec and I can do this, I can sing, I can play music? Can you bring us back to that moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can only go back there by looking. That is a hindsight revelation. It's looking back and understanding what happened, and it was a little bit of hey, we can do this. There really was some of that, but it's also a not accepting and not knowing and not accepting the limitations or obstacles that people would try to put in your path. Even if they were trying to do it out of concern for you, like a guidance counselor at my school might indicate that I would be a good biochemical something. And I didn't really listen. I didn't believe other people. I didn't trust, their ideas, and I didn't need to believe. I didn't think about it. I only pursued the thing that I wanted. And then I would say that, again, to go back to what kind of a city that Washington is, and in a lot of ways, it's not a music city. I mean, it's not an entertainment capital. So we didn't have that. I would, if I grew up in New York City or in L.A. and was trying to, I don't know what you call break into the entertainment. I mean, I don't even think of it as entertainment. To me, it was like a philosophical pursuit, but with musical instruments. But there would be 1,000 people would stab me in the back before I could get anywhere, because they need to eat that lunch before I do. That's just the way it is. That's what I've been told, and I've heard it reported back from people that moved to those places to try and make it. So we weren't burdened by that here in Washington, and never even we had an idea of positivity and then more positivity, and it was less of a decision than a movement. It just happened, and believe me, it could have gone either way. It could have gone south easily if people somehow developed a really major distrust of each other, or a disappointment, or discouragement, or disheartening, or anything. Yeah. But instead, all the things that were challenges, like how to get to play somewhere, you couldn't play in a nightclub. They weren't going to book punk rock bands, so you find a VFW hall. I mean, none of that's news now because everybody does it. For us, it was kind of new. Yeah. And once you start doing things for yourself, and then same thing with Dischord, just in its very essence, was like there weren't record labels trying to, that came later. That was the year the punk broke or whatever, when they, vacuumed up everybody who had any kind of a musical instrument, had to become a property of somebody else. And then you just sell whole packages full of bands to each other. Yeah. A song is nowhere in there, but that wasn't the landscape for us in 1979. So we just wanted to make some songs, play them with each other, for each other. And then also, I would say that early shows, we would try to help each other. Like Untouchables was the first band I was in. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what show. Well, Teen Idols brought us on stage to play, Minor Threat brought us on stage to play a song, because we weren't allowed to get on the bill. The club didn't want us to play, but they were so adamant to support each other, that we just ran up on stage and grabbed their instruments at the end of the set and started playing until they turned off the power and dragged us off. I mean, that's the kind of thing you do. Instead of like trying to hold a band down, you try and pull each other up and just keep on doing that. And you see that the club is the enemy, not the other band. You're not competing for the stage. You're sharing the stage against all odds, And so I feel like that was sort of the spirit of things. It wasn't a formula that was decided on. It was just recognized later, and I see it now, and it worked. It really is. That's the PMA kind of thing. I know that Napoleon Hill didn't. I mean, I think you probably capitalized on this whole idea, but it's a system of believing in something positive and leaning and consistently reapplying that idea. And I think that the thing is, it can't die. It's still, this is why you're talking about it today, Yeah.
I just, as a side note, I invoked positive mental attitude with my daughter the other day as she was struggling with a spelling test. We were practicing. She was like, "Ah!" I'm like, "Ramona, PMA, positive mental attitude." And I thought of, anyway, I'm just a little side note. There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs when something gains traction locally and you start to see shows are selling out, records are selling locally. Do you have a sense memory of when you felt like that there were external people paying?
Oh, yeah, there's several examples of it. I mean, one first example of the when shows are selling out or whatever is, when the 930 Club first opened. And it was previously, before that, not to spend too much time on all the stories, but it was like a hole-in-the-wall pub kind of a place called the Atlantis. Then the building was being refurbished, and this woman, Dodie, she started up the 930 Club. And it was a pretty nice looking place, but she wasn't that interested in booking local hardcore or local punk rock bands, really. And then hardcore in particular, no. Especially because we were underage. There was no beer to be sold at those shows. So there's no bottom line. There's nothing in it for them. They're a club. That's their job is selling beer.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of wheedling and discussion, and she agreed to do these on Sunday afternoon. Then they became a whole thing everywhere, but Sunday matinees, and it's a time that the club, they basically just open the door and turn on the lights, and we would play. And she came down to see the first one to see how it was going, and there was a line. It was Minor Threat. I'm gonna blank. Well, it was 3 bands. Minor Threat headlining, and might have been one of my bands. I don't know as well. But there was a line down the street and around the corner, and she's like, "Who are all these people? How was I missing this the whole time?" She didn't know that there was that. Yeah. She just didn't know. So we had to, then that was one example, and then we were welcome to play there after that, by the way. But then there was also, for me, like, I would just go down to the 930 Club or DC Space or somewhere, and just always, when a band is playing that I'm interested in, you just go and pay and go in. Mm-hmm. It was never sold out. Mm-hmm. It was just a thing to do. And then after that, we began to get more recognition, it would sell out. So then they started selling tickets on, you could call in. And so people from the suburbs are calling in and having tickets. And so I'd go, and there would be nobody there, and it'd still be sold out. Like, I would go down early to get a ticket, because they're buying the tickets on the phone. And I was like, who could do that? Like, it never even occurred to me. Like, and now it's like, of course, the third-party ticket sellers buy them in advance, and you have to buy it from the other guy. But those are examples of when punk rock, what I was most interested in was something that was not even, I couldn't fill a room of a 75, much less 100 and then 1,000. So those were things where I began to develop, and also seeing kids. I knew everybody for the first year, I would say, at a punk rock show. I knew every single person, whether I was friends with them or not. they were always the same folks. Yeah. And then all of a sudden there was really a big rush, and it had to do with television, I think. And
right.
And like Quincy and but they began to have these, I don't know, just hit Hollywood, and people would then come to shows with a different notion of what punk rock is or how to act, and that was really jarring then, but we accommodate it.
Yeah, you say it's jarring. I imagine it was probably some mix of gratifying, like validating, perhaps, like, oh no, not at all.
No. It was like, I love it here under my rock. Who lifted the lid on this?
Okay.
Now it's like, everything was fine.
Yeah.
And now people want to tell me how to play my own music, and I just remember like playing a show down in Virginia Beach, and this guy standing in front of the thing, and he's like snapping his fingers and they kept spitting on me. And I was like, what are you doing? He goes, that's what we do, right? We spit, right. And then he's like punching people, and I was like, maybe. I don't think, I'm not into, my friends can spit on me, but you can't spit on me. Like,
so did that stuff inform your decision to be like, I'm out, I don't want to do this right now? Like, something happened to the thing I love?
Absolutely not.
Nothing.
No. I mean, I certainly changed the way I thought about things, and the songs that we were writing, and the things that, like Ignition has a whole song about it's, if you want to sit all the way through it, but this is a band I was in, we had a song literally about the scene beginning and looking one way, and then it's changing, and then but it's yours.
Yes.
You don't run away from it because somebody comes in and is a temporary something or other. Yeah. You just keep on doing your thing the way that you do it, and but you can have an opinion about it. You can drive it in the direction you want to. Hopefully, it'll go. But yeah, so it's worth addressing. But I never felt like anybody could take it from me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Including all the anybody who with the entertainment industry or whatever. I mean, they can have their version, but that's literally on their end of it.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward to Hammered Hulls. I was alluding to this earlier, the sound of this band. To me, when I listened to it more, like I was listening to it the last few days and thinking, this does kind of encapsulate the Dischord catalog in a way, to me. I'm sure it wasn't conscious in any way. What I mean by that is in terms of genre signifiers, if you will, one song can have like a post-hardcore or hardcore kind of feel, and then shift into whatever that very idiosyncratic Discord groove that, you know, informed by reggae and whatnot, it's really remarkable. For me also, I couldn't help but think of Shellac, a band I really love, or No Means No.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, or No Means No.
Cool.
Like these kinds of things come up for me as well in terms of the arrangements. You talked about the lyrics, you talked about the band coming together. Did you have discussions about where you wanted to take the sound of this band?
Not really. Mark is the composer of those songs, really, and a lot of them were things he's had kicking around for years. So, and then the others, we really just, they would start with a riff and then just get pulled together very quickly. Yeah. I can only imagine. I would say that probably what that is you're seeing the, you know, these are the elements of our makeup. You know, these are the things that we've been collecting shells on the beach for. Well, I've been doing it for 40 years, and they've been doing it for, you know. So these are things that we have in our toolkit, and they come back out, I guess. Yeah. And I guess that would be the explanation for it. But I would say that Mark is he tooled everything into the final product of the song, and then and there you have it.
So one important aspect of the narrative of this record is that it was, by my understanding, one of the final, if not the final, recording sessions at Inner Ear Studios. Is that correct?
It may be.
Yeah, it may be.
Yeah, I mean, Extreme was recording around the same time, and we'll see what happens with that recording session.
Oh, that's correct.
They,
yeah.
They would be the truly the last, and that would be very fitting. I mean, they're, but on the other hand, it's you know, I don't know. There's a lot of emphasis placed on the end of Inner Ear, and I guess it's not really the end of Inner Ear. I don't know. It's the closing of a building. But Don, you know, when I started working with Don, it was in his basement, and that's where he is again. So.
Oh, is he back? And so he's doing sessions still somehow.
I don't know to what level. I mean, he is. You know, it may not be like the Bad Brains probably aren't going to record in his basement again, but he has a sound. You know, he set up his studio back in the basement, and things are happening down there.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that distinction, because it is just a room. Don is really the magician. Probably wherever he sets up, he's going to get the sound.
Yeah, I mean, I will. That being said, let's not get too far away from that too quickly, because it was just a room, but spectacular room. I mean, it was really the way that he allowed it to be set up was, you know, it's in a warehouse space, but he filled it with. I mean, I haven't been in a lot of recording studios everywhere in my life, but the ones that are not Inner Ear tend to have lots of pictures of successful bands, and then all the, you know, platinum and gold and whatever, I don't know, some sort of awards that make people think they're important, and all that. And Don had like children's art and toys, and he did have the bands that recorded there. He had, you know, displayed. But really, he was filled with lots and lots of creative things, because he's a creative person. But all of those were little doorways for people who are making things. You can look at these things and get out of a trap that you're in, which happens a lot when you're in the studio. And that is just something that I just was amazed by, like, just as a space. He really allowed it to grow in this very comfortable way, and super cool. But of course, he was the main ingredient. You know, he's calm but also firm. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but and also tireless, absolutely tireless. I mean, I don't know how he could stick to so many bands, noodling on the same little note over and over, and then he'd have one more idea and whatever. You know, like, he's just really amazing.
Yeah, for those who are wondering, Don is the primary engineer and owner of what was Inner Ear Studios. And if you haven't seen the Fugazi documentary Instrument, I would encourage you to do so, because there's extended sequences of the band recording their album Red Medicine in that space. So just to put pictures to what Alec and I are describing, I would recommend that. Not to be left out here, though, I think it's also significant that your brother Ian was involved in producing this particular record. Can you talk a little bit about what he brought to the band and these songs?
Again, I mean, there's like learned experience, and then there's lived experience, and it gets sort of that thing that we were talking about in the beginning of this conversation of just doing, or like skateboarding when you're learning a trick. Like it's this it's repetition, but it's not rote, So that's the what he has it's just in full bounty, or like that he's done a ton of things, but he still has a really pretty focused plan. Like he doesn't have to try everything. He knows where to go with things. So that's really, I just think I'm glad that we could do it. Like it's, again, like a lot of this stuff, I don't even know exactly how it came to pass. It was an idea, and then it was like, can we do this? And it ended up being quite difficult, as because it got interrupted. Like we started the day before the pandemic shut down, and then we had to finish almost 2 years later. And but anyway, having him at the helm he knows what you're trying to do. He's totally familiar with everybody in the band, as well as the kind of music that we make. And that's the challenge of the producer, but it's also, they become another member, and you really do have to listen. And it's just a really interesting collaboration. But he's got so much experience with all of that. And also, to go back to the space of Inner Ear, but working with Don, that's literally like, that place is the shape of Ian, like it's
yes.
He fits right in there, and so it's you're just in the vessel with him when you're working with him producing.
4, 5, 6 years ago now, Ian was on the show for an episode, and he said something that seems to have really resonated with people. I've seen it quoted in books and all sorts of things. He said, I'm a pop guy. I have a pop sensibility, and I think it was just interesting to hear that for some people. I always thought that. I always think Ian's contributions to music are very hooky, very infectious. Mm-hmm. As I'm listening to songs like Hardest Road, I can't get this out of my head. Hardest Road is the one back home. And I actually wondered if he was singing on that a little bit. Did he contribute to the shape and sound of any of the songs in any particular way?
That's me. That's all me.
All you. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have very similar timbres, obviously, as brothers.
Yeah. But, all genetically connected there.
Did he offer arrangement ideas?
Oh, my hell yes.
Yes. Okay.
There was a lot of things. That, to me, they seemed really major. These sort of things that when we got in the studio, we wanted to address, and so that was a little bit. But yes, he did, absolutely. There was great ideas. I'm scrolling through trying to think of examples, but there were a number of things that we changed in songs, and that's another thing that I'm not used to, and it's also like not really the way you want to be in the studio. It is an hourly rate. You don't want to be composing in the studio. But if there's a good idea, you don't want to pass it up. And so you're listening to something, and he would say, well, you know what? What I'm hearing is, why don't, have you never thought about? And then we would think, let's just try it. And I don't think the thing you're talking about right now is one of his suggestions. But there were, a number of things and those are great ideas. And also Ian is, of course, he's familiar with all the, punk rock and all these bands that he works with, but an amazing student of music, of rock and roll and pop and things that might seem anomalous to punk rock, but he gets it, and he listened to all that shit. And so that's a whole nother, that's a kind of a language that I'm not as well read as most people who, even people in my band will talk about the minutia of a Beatles album that I'm not familiar with. But Ian, he can roll with the deepest of them when it comes to any kind of, especially with the Beatles or Hendrix or some of the larger things.
Yeah. And again, I don't mean to harp on this, but I do hear that sort of, the song like Staggering Genius to me brings me right to a band like Shellac of North America. I think of them, I can hear their influence in the guitar tone and whatnot. And I know Ian's a huge fan of theirs too. So I wonder, all of you together, just thinking about where things are coming from and bringing them into this sound, which is really remarkable. I want to ask you about these lyrics a little bit, Alec. Because they are very striking to me as well. I think you have a really interesting way of dealing with language economically, but directly. But I do want to cite a song just as a way to bring us into this. So the song Bog People has this sequence of words that struck me. Meteoric dagger stayed, the virus was collected, broken shoulder blade, diseases resurrected. So immediately I was like, oh, this feels very contemporary because of the time we're in. But then as I kept going, marks made persisted, protection from harm, carbon horse was pricked, running down her arm. That took me somewhere else. And I only cite this as a sort of esoteric but direct example of what I'm talking about. I find your lyrics really interesting. Do you have an overarching sense of where they might have emanated from for this collection of songs?
Yeah, I mean it's overarching.
They're all quite distinctive. I should say that. I do think they're all about different things. Yeah, but I just wonder.
They are,
yeah.
and I mean some of them are really. I just would open up. And this was another different thing for me as I changed the way that I think. But there was a time when I was younger when I was always trying to express myself and wanted people to understand, like, you just don't get me, and I felt really misunderstood. And then I got to a place where, like, I don't want you to understand me. I like who I am, and I don't need you. I don't need to be understood in quite the same way. And that really helped to get to that phase. And then I went a little, I don't know if it's further or different, but I just began to explore it. Most of the words are really about words. I mean, I just, so writing these songs, I would start, first I hear the song, the composition, and what do I feel like? Rarely do I have a set of lyrics that I try to map onto a pre-existing tune. I mean, I think every single song on the record I wrote hearing the music first. And honestly, the Bog People, it's funny that, I mean, I feel like I've now had a few people pick that out as a really intriguing song, and it was one of the sort of simplest impetuses. Like, we kind of needed another song to fill out our set. And for me, it started with thinking about when I was a kid. There used to be in the Natural History Museum, there was a display of a person that had turned to soap.
Oh.
They were buried in a graveyard near the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. I know this seems really far afield, but literally I'm talking about people who are found in bogs. When I talk about Bog People, that was the first thought. It was pretty direct. However, if you can leave it open, and the person who's listening to it can inhabit that. You can really, if you leave it open enough so that people can imagine things, and it enters their mind and their imagination, and it changes shape inside of them, they can take that song to other places. And so I'm, hesitant to sort of focus it, but but the Bog People are these people that they find in bogs who are generally, I think they were sacrificed. And so, and a lot of them are tattooed, and the horses that are, the thing that's running down her arm is a horse that's running. It's not drooling down her. That's a kind of a word. And if you look at many of the words that I use have at least 3 meanings, and I want that. I want you to see, it's like a refracted thing always. So I want you to follow the other way. I might be saying something and I want you to get confused and go some other way and see. Yes, go on.
I don't. I have a question. My hand was raised. Sorry, yes. Professor. No, I hear what you're saying, and when I don't want to William Burroughs this, but when I hear horse, I think of heroin.
Oh,
when I hear tracks, well, sometimes I do. That's just the way I am. And then when I hear tracks down someone's arm, I think of heroin maybe too. So, and I'm rewatching Breaking Bad, so maybe that's on my mind too. So is that where you're getting? No, I'm not saying that's what you're getting at, but are you talking triple, double, triple meanings?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I want to allow it to happen, but I'm trying to think of somebody else was asking about that song the other day, and they had a completely other take.
Yeah.
It's political. It was a political thought, and I hadn't thought of that. I love when people come back to me and say, I always thought that song was about, and I'm like, good God, that couldn't be further from what I was really thinking. And that was the thing that frustrated me for the first half of my adult life, was being misunderstood. The second half so far is the greatest pleasure I can have, is to be, I feel like I'm having a communion with people without having to do it. Like we're there. Yeah. I'm just using some words that we all have in common that are so rich that we can get everything we want from them. And so all I need to do is string a few together. And sometimes I really do want to paint a picture that's pretty set. But
Yeah.
mostly I want there to be, I feel like that's just, as a person who listens to and reads, but listens to music, I feel flattered or honored or something when I can have this experience with a person who's creating something, and it's a stingy person, a creative person who won't let you have that, and I'm not that person.
Well, it was interesting over breakfast today watching my children sing along to Rights and Reproductions.
Nice.
They've just heard the record so much that in the house and in the van, as we've been going to their running races and whatnot, they love it. Like it's an infectious thing. But my son has questions. What does that mean? What does that? And I'm like, I don't know what it means, but what does it make you think? Like, what does it make you feel?
Exactly.
And so we have those kinds of conversations, and I feel like that's what you're getting at. You're planting seeds of ideas and words, but it's really up to us to figure out where they go now. And you seem at peace with that.
Yeah, well, I that's my gift to you and anybody else. I want everyone to have that, but it's a gift to me. I get to hear that your son is interested and wondering, and I'm happy to, like if he has a specific question, maybe we can explore it together. It's nothing.
Well,
it's okay. No, seriously, what was it? Let's do it.
I'm trying to think of what their questions were specifically. It was interesting watching my daughter, who's 7, sing along to the record today over breakfast. It's not something. It's not necessarily a breakfast record on some level, but actually for a little kid, it's like a little cup of coffee. What were I'm trying to think of what Levon's questions were. He mostly wondered what you were saying. Now that I think about it, let me just think of. Yeah, like just trying to figure out why. Actually, one of the things, why is this person singing like this? And it escapes me.
What's he so mad about?
Yeah, so I wish I had a specific. They're at school as we're speaking, so I can't ask them specifics at the moment. But if I think of it, I will email you their specific questions, because in general, you have to understand, in my house, given what I do in this capacity, they're just hearing a new record every week as I prepare for my interviews. So it's been, I don't know what it's going to do to them on some level as they get older and are just constantly exposed to new ideas.
It's going to be great. Don't worry.
I think it will be. I'm not worried about it,
Fantastic.
But it is fascinating. So all this to say, you've captured the 7 to 11 demographic. If you are looking for that one.
All right. We're trying to grow our market. Yeah. We're like Teen Spirit or whatever. We're just trying to get in there.
It's a wonderful, wonderful album. I love it. And like I say, it speaks to a lot of my various musical interests. What's sort of next, from your perspective, what's sort of next for this band in terms of either making new music or touring or whatnot?
Yeah, there are more songs. We're eager to get into new. I mean, Mark has got a lot of new ideas. I'll have to catch up with lyrics, but I get worried, but it seems to happen when it needs to. But we do have a lot of new songs that are coming together now, but I do really look forward to playing. We haven't played in so long, and I want to. So we will do these sort of short tours in November and December coming up. We'll go up to New York City and maybe to Rhode Island. I can't remember what the furthest north, and then back down, and then we'll go out to Detroit and back, and all some places in between, Cleveland and I think Pittsburgh is on there. But for me, to be honest, I don't like making records as much as I really love to be in a room with people. Yeah. And all the things that we were just talking about, I like that to happen in a real atmosphere with people. And I do, a word of warning, the words change. Everything that's on that record may be different when you see Hammered Hulls live.
Well, as I look at the poetry on Needlepoint Tiger, and I don't even know how you're going to. We were talking earlier about repetition and memorizing things. Right. But this seems to me to be an artifact of freeform thought. Does that make sense? Like that's just an example where I could see that. Sorry, just to pick up on what you were just saying, I could see Needlepoint Tiger going a totally different way.
Yeah, and that one doesn't ever change really. But Right String Production changes almost every time.
I see. Okay.
Right String Productions, it's almost like it's a vibe. I read the room, and I don't read it like look around, but I feel something. I feel differently, and I will pick up on different things. And sometimes it may be something that's happening in the streets or in the world that is making me think of something else. And but just the idea of that sort of Anyway, that one changes quite a bit. Needlepoint Tiger is a string of words that are that do always follow each other, but it was written, as you say, sort of in that manner, But yeah, it stays the same.
It's interesting too because I often will request lyric sheets for before I'm talking to someone, and sometimes they're a little off. There's typos. I will say that I don't know when this lyric sheet, when they were written down this way. As I was following along the bouncing ball, as you were singing, I'm like, oh, there's whole things in these lyric sheets that are not on this record at all. Like whole parts of songs are not. I've got lyrics here that you're not singing in that song. And so all I'm getting at is I don't think those are mistakes. It picks up on what you're saying. There's a spirit of change. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we're a living institution. We're things, right.
It's remarkable. I hope
we're not locked in.
I hope it comes up to Canada at some point, or I can get down to see it somehow. If I can get over my nerves about such things and those sorts of things.
Hopefully we will come to Canada. I would love to.
Yeah. So if people want to learn more about this band, obviously they can visit the Discord site, and I'll link to things in the podcast description. Alec, if people want to keep tabs on your band using the conventions of the internet, are there such things right now?
The one that I know that we have an Instagram page, or whatever we call it, site. I don't know. We have that, but I don't think we have anything beyond that. But
okay.
Yeah, so I guess Instagram, and then search engine, like Alta Vista, whatever, Ask Jeeves, any of those.
Yeah, Lycos.
Hammered
Yeah,
Halls.
exactly.
Yes.
By the way, I don't normally make a point of asking people about their band names, but it's an interesting and evocative band name. I think of boats, but there is a hammer that shows up, at least in one song here. Can you briefly just tell us where the name came from?
Yes. It's from a poem that I wrote that was inspired by an article in an issue of Popular Mechanics from 1932. And it was instructions for a young boy, I guess, how to buy a boat. If you were going to buy yourself a rowboat or a small craft, and you see that word craft, right? If you're going to buy yourself a craft, how to check this thing out, and you hammer along the garboard strake to feel, and if it makes a sound that is a certain way, it's good, and if it hits and makes a dead sound, maybe you should not buy this boat. And it's just a little instructional thing, but it was so beautifully written. This article just blew me away. And it's just a little thing in a magazine from 1932 about it's a little scientific something or other.
I see.
So when we were trying to think of band names, I threw that out there as a joke, and they said, "That's great. Let's use it."
It's a rather beautiful. That's a beautiful story, if I might say. I want to read that article now. It sounds very lovely. Now, if we can go out on a song from this record, I wonder if you can choose one for us and also tell us why this one came to mind.
Let's go out with Written Word, and mostly because that is the lyrics really are inspired by this band itself. That's one of the first songs I wrote with this band, and they developed in a way that, so when I sing it, I think of us. So let's use that song as an outro.
This is the one I believe that I was alluding to earlier. You got to hammer them home. The hammer is what I'm referring to. There. And yeah, I found my music in the common word.
It's a typewriter, by the way.
Yes, exactly. There you go. All right.
That's a typewriter. And the character's mark is what the word character actually is. It means to strike something. So you're hammering this. You're writing, and you're making, you're communicating, but you're doing it in a way that is going to last forever.
This is great. I know you were like, it's up to everyone and make their own interpretation of things. I appreciate this little bit of insight. It means a lot,
I'm
Alec.
happy to share.
All right. This is Written Word by Hammered Hulls from their beautiful new album, Careening, which is available via Discord Records. Alec, this was a tremendous honor and a pleasure for me. I hope you enjoyed at least some semblance of this conversation, and I thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's great to meet you, and thanks for this interview.
Speaking now of the written word.
That was really enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed the music you heard by Hammered Halls, and I want to thank Alec Mackay for appearing on this, the 729th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about and you're looking for it on one of those platforms, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, you can visit vishkhanna.com, and I think everything you would need is right there. You can like Creative Control on Facebook if you so desire. You can follow the show on Twitter at vishcreative, or you can follow me directly on Twitter and also, as a bonus, on Instagram at vishkhanna. I'm fairly active on those things in a way. I'm not trying to tell you should follow, but why not? Anyway, there you go. What else was I going to say? Oh, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to sustain this podcast. Now, you can donate any amount you want to. Any amount. Right? $1 a month, $3 a month, $15 a month. You know how amounts work. You can pick and choose whatever you want, and you can change it at any time. Now, $6 or more a month grants you access to some exclusive content, including you get the episodes, ideally earlier than everybody else. And I mean, you do get them earlier than everybody else, but as I'm speaking to you right now, it is 10:54 p.m. Now, normally I would have everything prepared, and this early episode would be out a good 12 hours ahead of the midnight launch of the regular podcast, but I was busy this week and I couldn't do it. So I'm just telling you what's happening in real life right now. Normally you get the episodes early, you get access to exclusive content, sometimes it's bonus time with my current slate of guests, sometimes I dig into my archives and I find older things and I post them in the Patreon as treats. But anyway, I think most of you who support people on Patreon, I think you're just supporting their current work. That's my sense of things. Anyway, who am I to tell you what you want? All I'm saying is $6 or more a month would be great if you can do it, and if not, any amount is great and you can change it at any time. And if you're interested in receiving a Creative Control t-shirt, just message me and I'll get you one while supplies last. You can message me and do all those other things at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks again to Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks to my friend Jim Guthrie for lending me some music of his. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Alec Mackay. It was truly an honor and a pleasure to have Alec on the show and to talk so extensively about his work. So check out Hammered Halls. Please subscribe to this podcast or follow it. Tell your friends about it. I will talk to you very soon. Be well. Peace. Bye for now.